Running backs preview part 2. Let's get to it. Talk about the best and worst values all the way throughout your drafts, from Christian McCaffrey to Giovanni Bernard and other running backs that don't catch a lot of passes. We welcome you to today's show. Today's episode is sponsored by the Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TV, movies, music, gaming, and more. Stay tuned for additional details about Sonos Arc later in today's show. I have the Sonos Arc. It is the Christian McCaffrey of entertainment. It is incredible, and I look forward to telling you all about it a little bit later. All right, what's up, Heath? Welcome to the show. You weren't on RB Preview Part 1. Welcome to Part 2.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I'd like to draft running backs that can beat their ADP, and I don't know that Christian McCaffrey can beat his ADP, so
that means you're not going to take him?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
He's a bust. Hot take. Jamie is here. Dave is here as well. One thing I noticed about running backs, used to be, let's take a look at the last 5 years. How many top 24 running backs, guys who finished in the top 24, were drafted late? I used round 7 or later. Less the last couple of years. Okay, so the last 5 seasons, 10 in 2016, 8 in 2017, 10 in 2018. So that's at least a third of the top 24 running backs in full PPR in 2016, 17, and 18. At least a third of them were drafted in round 7 later. Now, 2019 won. It was the best year for running backs. Like, they were hard. It was a terrible year for zero RB. Only one running back finished top 24 and was drafted in round 7 or later. Last year, 6. I don't know if this is part of a trend, if it's fluky or what, but we haven't had we had James Robinson, and there were a few others, but we haven't really had a ton of really late or undrafted players who had a massive impact for the full season. So that is what it is. I don't know if you guys make anything of that. Heath, make anything of that?
I think what I would say is 2019 is the clear outlier, and the 6 is a little bit lower than the 8 or 10, but this number is going to be so heavily influenced by how many major running back injuries do we have and how many of the guys do we drafted in the first 2 rounds don't finish in the top 24 opening up spots.
Well, but we had that last year. We had McCaffrey and Saquon go down with injuries. Those were first round picks. There were
Mike Davis,
Mike Davis came right. So that's an example of a guy that came from beyond round 7 and ended up being great. But you'd think in a year where those 2 guys are hurt, along with a couple of other busts at the running back position that weren't, round 7 or later, you kind of can't help but think that last year was a bit of an anomaly in itself.
All right. Well, we'll talk about our favorite late round picks for sure. And I just want to tell you about a new podcast we have. If you're into DFS, Fantasy Football Today, DFS is the name of the show. Get ready to dominate DFS this year with optimized lineups, stacks, perceived ownership, leverage plays, and more. Join Frank Stamfel, Mike McClure, and Sia Najad 2 times a week in the Fantasy Football Today DFS feed. The first episode dropped on Tuesday. You can download and follow the Fantasy Football Today DFS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, wherever you listen to FFT. I've got some news and notes. You know what, Jamie? You haven't spoken yet. We're going to give you the news and notes. You ready?
Sure.
All right, we're going to do this real quick. No more than 30 seconds per note. Saquon Barkley hoping he can make it back for week 1.
Yay.
Round 1 pick?
Yes.
Okay. DeAndre Swift has missed significant practice time with a groin injury.
Boo.
Round 8 pick?
Round 3.
Round 3. Okay. Dobbins or Swift, PPR?
Still Swift.
Okay. Jamal Williams or Trey Sermon?
Trey Sermon.
All right. Aaron Jones has a hamstring injury. Any concerns?
Aaron Jones over all those guys. No, not yet.
Darren Waller has missed 8 straight practices?
8 straight.
Any concerns?
Not yet.
Okay. Still a second round pick. Jamie's maybe a little more inclined, late second, early third. A lot of people are going to take him in the second. Hunter Henry expected to miss a couple weeks with a shoulder injury, Jamie.
Not good. Better for Jonnu Smith.
Did you move Jonnu Smith up?
I moved him 1 spot ahead of Tyler Higbee from 13 to 12.
Okay. And Baltimore wide receiver Rashad Bateman left with a soft tissue injury, I believe.
Core muscle, I think I saw.
What's that?
Core muscle injury?
Soft tissue? Oh, core muscle? Okay.
Dr. Heath Cummings showed me the video today and said groin.
Core
I
muscle
believe,
like
I believe the core muscle is connected to the groin muscle, and they are both soft tissues. So I think we're all on the same
we're
page.
all right.
Somewhere between the belly button and the knee.
Not good. Not good for the Ravens. Not good for Lamar Jackson with Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman both ailing.
Good for Mark Andrews.
Great for Mark Andrews.
Mandrews.
All right, let's get into ADP. Now, we did at the end of yesterday's show, before we randomly ranked Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Oh, that was so fun.
It really was. We talked about the first round, basically, of average draft position.
Let's get Heath's top 5 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
At the end, Heath, think about it. You've got like 55 minutes to think about your top 5 Arnold movies. So let's go with all right, we got McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Kamara.
People want to know that more than they do this.
Come on. Who's 5 for you, Heath?
Well, I haven't even got my. I'm gonna need a little time to like put them in order, but like I'll just give it a tease. Kindergarten Cop is definitely in the top 5.
Yes. All right. I'm not the only one. So 5 is Zeke for Dave and Jamie. Is it Zeke for you?
It is Zeke for me, certainly with the with Jones battling the hamstring right now. And actually, I'd made a little bit of a tweak before that because they had talked about not playing AJ Dillon really in the preseason and treating him like Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. And I thought, I may not have enough touches projected for AJ Dillon. So I made a little adjustment, and that put Zeke ahead of Aaron Jones, but he's still 6 for me and a pretty clear 6.
Yeah, everybody's got Jones 6. Everybody's got Zeke 5.
If Aaron Jones does miss time, though, I'll put Barkley ahead of Jones.
I'm looking at non-PPR rankings. I'm sorry, because non-PPR, everybody's got Nick Chubb 7. So we have a consensus top 7 in the
I'm gonna move Barkley ahead of Chubb.
In non-PPR.
Yep.
Okay. In full PPR, we have a consensus top 7 in the rankings. It is. It's Kamara, Cook. It's McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara, Henry, Elliott, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler. Gets a little more interesting after that.
We all have the same top 7.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't know if that's ever happened before.
There's the kiss of death.
Amy, has that ever happened before?
Who knows?
Since you started in 06?
I don't know because Heath wasn't there in 06. So.
Well, but even just you and me, I don't think we've ever had the exact same top 7 before. That's wild. I don't think we've ever had it with Heath around either.
No, it's definitely
mental.
Yeah, I'm not doing my job here. I will. I'll be better. I'm sorry.
Contrarian Heath, let's go. All right, so ADP is McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Kamara, Barkley at 5, Zeke at 6.
Actually, I think Zeke moved ahead of him.
What I'm looking at right now,
I just opened it today, so Zeke is 5, Barkley 6.
It's funny.
Right.
If you look at overall ADP, Zeke is ahead of Barkley. If you look at running back ADP, Barkley is ahead of Zeke.
That's weird.
So it makes perfect sense.
It doesn't matter. Nick Chubb is 7, which we agreed yesterday. He should not be in PPR. Eckler should go ahead of him. Jonathan Taylor is more of like a swing pick, 12th-ish overall.
I mean, anywhere between 11 and 15 is fine.
Okay. Aaron Jones is going too low, we think. He should be your 6th running back off the board. He's going after Chubb, Taylor, Eckler, and Aaron Jones. But
he's ahead of Eckler overall.
Right. Okay. It doesn't really matter. Let's talk about late round 1 into early round 2. And if we think Eckler's 7 for everybody, how do we feel about the next group? The next group is, in some order, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, I think. Dave, take it away.
I think it's an interesting group, and this is where I bet there is absolutely no consensus about who that 8th best running back is. In PPR, you can make the case for Chubb just because he's good. You can make the case for Harris because of the opportunity. Same thing with Joe Mixon. But I think Barkley and Taylor need to really be in this group, and I think Antonio Gibson needs to be in this group too, just because if you're ranking Chubb and Najee Harris in this range, and you know that Saquon's on the way back, and you know that Taylor's healthy to begin with, I think the talent kind of overrides Chubb here. And it's not taking away anything from Chubb. He's great too. But I think there's just a little bit more upside with Taylor and Saquon. And we've been talking about it now for a few days. If we knew that Saquon would be fine, he would be much higher than this. And he's getting close to fine.
Yeah. like, I don't want to swing too far in either direction with Saquon. But like, I'm glad he's off the pup. We didn't think he was going to stay on the pup through the regular season. Like, when we were moving him down because of the report that he might not play until week 2 or week 3, that was not a report that he was going to start the season on the pup.
Right.
So he's not moved quite back up as much for me, I guess. But I have only one more running back in the first round, and the rest of these guys I pretty much have behind my group of wide receivers. And the guy that I still have in the first round is Joe Mixon, which makes everybody hate me. So I'm glad I'm back doing my job. But he's the guy that I really don't have a lot of concerns about. I think he's going to get the workload. I know Joe Burrow has had a tough start to camp, but I think that's going to resolve itself with time. And I think Mixon is this is going to be his best year.
And that's saying something, because 2018 was a great year for Joe Mixon. People might forget about that, but I think he was a top 10 running back. But, I guess he's so interesting. He got the work last year, and he was on pace for more than 50 catches. It's not like I know Gio's gone, so we are excited about his opportunity. One of his coaches said months ago, I want Joe Mixon on the field. I don't want Joe Mixon to come off the field.
Right.
He's got some pass protection things that he needs to work out, but I don't want Joe Mixon to come off the field. I don't remember that was the coordinator or running backs coach, but he got a lot of work last year, and he pretty much stunk except for one game. Well, so, what do you make of that, Heath? He was bad last year.
I mean, it was 6 games.
Yeah, but it was 119 carries. Like, it wasn't. Yeah, it was. You're right. It was 16. It was a bad game.
And I think the most important thing to remember is Joe Mixon was bad for those 6 games. He only averaged 3.6 yards per carry. Only had one good game. Whatever. He had enough work. He was the number 8 running back in fantasy. Because imagine if he had been good.
He scored 42 PPR points against Jacksonville. He was bad for 4 of those 6 games. He scored 14 points at the Colts because he scored a touchdown. I mean, look, we could look at where he finished, but we know Joe Mixon was bad last year, and people think that. And they also are tired of him getting hurt because he played through an injury for the first half of 2019, and he really struggled. So there are a lot of Mixon detractors, as we say all the time. People hate Joe Mixon. But let's at least acknowledge why they hate him, right? Because I think it's a combination.
It's just like Josh Jacobs was bad last year and finished RB8.
And he was bad. He was bad last year. There's no denying it. He scored a ton of touchdowns.
I would like to have a pair of running backs who are bad this year who finish in the top 10 in running back.
The problem is that their games, and Jacobs is proof of this last year, as is Mixon. And honestly, you can go back and look at Mixon for the last 3 seasons. Inconsistency is the problem. When you're taking a running back this early, you really want that running back to be good more often than 50% of the time. In 2018, played 14 games. He gave you 15 plus PPR in 7 of them. 2019 and 2020 combined, he played 22 games, 6 games with 15 plus PPR. Wow. So just because he's getting the touches and the work, it's great. You want to have that, but you want to be able to have somebody in fantasy that you're going to count on for big games each week. Now, if he's going to be inconsistent and you want to call him the Tyler Lockett of fantasy running backs, fine, but don't take him in with a top 15 pick.
Well, I think the thing that you're hoping for with Mixon is you're hoping that the passing game work is going to be such a huge boost for him that he takes over that role and doesn't come off the field and, makes some plays out in space and does some different things that we haven't really seen from him consistently because of Gio's presence. The other part is this offensive line is going to be better. No matter how you look at the additions and what they are. I mean, Pro Football Focus has ranked them higher than what they finished last year. Bringing in Riley Reif is, a bit of positive addition. The 3 late round picks that they spent in the draft. They're throwing capital at it, and so in some way, shape, or form, even if it's 10% better, 20% better, 50% better, however, it's going to be better. So those are the things you're hoping for. The negative is everything you guys have just laid out in terms of his inconsistency, plus the fact that the division has arguably 3 of the best defenses that he's going to face. Yeah. He's going to play them 6 times. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Baltimore are going to have 3 really, really good run defenses. And so that's going to be tough for him. Now you have a quarterback that's a little skittish coming off a knee injury. So those are legitimate concerns. I think he belongs in the second round. I think he's still got the upside of 300 plus touches. You've talked about this, Adam, what running backs do with 300 carries. He definitely has that potential to be that guy if he stays healthy. But can he put it all together week in, week out and do those type of things. There's a reason he's being drafted in round 2 in the back end of the first of the number 1 running backs.
Yeah, by the way, sorry, Dave, let me just say every running back in the last 5 years who's had 300 carries has finished top 5.
And he was on pace for that last year.
He was. LeGarrette Blount had 299 carries and did not finish top 5. Nick Chubb had 298 and did not finish top 5.
That intact.
Yeah, so if you got to get to 300, but they both finished top 12. All right, so there is, I think what Heath is referring to is there's a floor there because of all the touches, and that's absolutely true. Dave, what were you going to say?
It makes sense that there's a floor there for sure. So in his career against the Steelers, Joe Mixon has 1 game with over 100 yards and 1 touchdown. In his career against the Ravens, he has 1 game with over 100 yards and 1 touchdown. And Jamie's right. I'm glad Jamie brought up the schedule because it's tough. Like, not only does he take on the Browns, and the Browns are going to be a better defense this year, he's got the Vikings on the schedule. I think they're going to be tough. He's got Denver.
But this is where the passing down work has to come in and help him. You know, that's
if
that's
it's there,
the
it'll help him for sure. Well, but I still think the rushing efficiency could weigh on him a little bit. I'm not as sold as you are on the line.
I think we can all agree if Joe Mixon is the same guy he's been in his career, he will not be worth a pick in the first round.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So we need him to get better. Obviously,
well, we need him to get more work.
Right. Better for fantasy. Right.
First 3 games: Vikings, Bears, Steelers.
Right. I don't know for sure that more than one of those defenses is good.
I mean, the Vikings' defensive tackles should be very good. That doesn't necessarily mean their run defense is good, but they have 2 brand new defensive tackles, one who opted out last year, one that they signed in free agency. But we don't want to. Okay, we could spend an hour on Joe Mixon. Let's talk about the whole group, right? It's Mixon, it's Gibson, it's Najee Harris, it's Barkley and Jonathan Taylor. So first question: if Barkley is full go for week 1, is he ahead of everybody in that group?
by far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That group, I would still have him behind everybody else we've talked to, everyone else before, but yeah, he would be ahead of this. He'd be at the top of this group for me.
Okay, then so let's talk about if anything separates Mixon, Harris, Gibson. Who am I forgetting? Taylor, Mixon, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and Antonio Gibson. Heath obviously prefers Mixon. Dave, who's your favorite in that group?
Give me the names one more time. It's
yeah.
Gibson, Chubb, Harris, Mixon.
No. Oh, Chubb. I'm sorry. Gosh. Yeah. Chubb should be in there too. All right. I'm sorry. It's a 5-person group. It is Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, and Najee Harris.
It's Taylor. Definitely has the most upside of this group. He's healthy. The offensive line will eventually come around for Indianapolis. That matters to me more than the quarterback coming around for Indianapolis, and they're going to feed him the rock.
Jamie, who's your favorite in this group?
Barkley, and it's not close.
Oh, no, sorry. Barkley is not in this group.
Oh, Taylor, Chubb, Gibson, and Mixon?
And Najee.
Taylor.
Okay, Taylor. And your Mixon, Heath?
Yes. Taylor would be next, though.
Who is your least favorite in this group?
Harris.
Najee Harris. Dave, who's your least favorite in this group?
Is Mixon in this group?
Yes.
Mixon is my
yeah, we've been yelling about it for 10 minutes. Jamie, who's your least favorite in this group?
Najee.
Now, is that like I don't like him or he's just the last one?
He's just the last one, but they're all very good.
All right. So you guys like Gibson better than Najee Harris?
I think the thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put Gibson behind Najee.
Okay. I think the thing with Harris, and like we're always projecting with all running backs, but we're projecting the Steelers to throw to their running backs a lot more and for maybe the worst offensive line in football to not hinder him.
Sure. Again, though, worst offensive line that we're judging based on last year and new faces, so the hope would be that the new faces are better with the new system.
But they did not add
anyone
who has
I
ever been.
I don't think you're wrong what you said, Heath, but it's again, they're replacing guys that names that you knew that probably were starting to fade and not play as well. Maybe you can make a case Villanueva should have been back, but again, the players that they got rid of, hopefully the group as a whole is better. They have 5 guys in different spots, 4 new starters overall. Yeah,
but it seems like a weakness, and if it's better,
it definitely seems like a weakness. And they started off playing well last year, but they quickly deteriorated. You could make all the arguments you want to about James Conner injury, not playing well, Benny Snell not being the guy. All those things are true. Ben not being right, everything was kind of just bad for a team that went 12-4, by the way. But still, they feel pretty confident about the group that they have, that the system that they're going to put in place with the new coordinator. And you got to just, again, it's the same thing. It goes back to the make a case why a guy's a bust. It's make a case why a guy can be, successful. And the hope with Mixon is that offensive line's better. He gets better in the pass game. The hope with Najee is that he is that 3-down guy that Tomlin's always used, and that this offensive line is better. So you have to weigh these things. This is what the choices that you make. Do you decide on Najee versus Gibson? Do you decide on Edwards-Helaire? Maybe he should be in this conversation. Do you take the safe route of Nick Chubb, knowing that he's not going to be involved in the passing game to the same extent as maybe some of these guys? So, or do you just avoid all of them, like Heath is probably going to do, and just take a wide receiver? So it goes back to the conversation yesterday of do you take one running back in the first round, and then this is the second round group, and you just get away from the running back and take the wide receiver?
Do you all feel comfortable with these players, as top 18 picks and potentially ahead of Diggs, Ridley, and Hopkins?
Yes.
No.
I would put Diggs ahead of most of them. I would put them ahead of the other group just because I think 4 through 8 to 10 at the wide receiver position could get a little bunched up.
So Heath, do you ever end up with these guys? Do you ever end up with
I don't. I've definitely drafted Mixon on a few teams. I don't think I've drafted Barkley or Taylor. I got Chubb in our mock today, but that wasn't a draft. I don't think I've drafted Harris or Gibson. So no. This is like early in the second round is generally when I'm going with those wide. And Jamie said it. I think he's right. Like that 4 through 8 gets bunched up. I just put 4 through 8, maybe 4 through 7. Like those guys all ahead of this group. I've got these running backs ranging from like 16 to 22 as opposed to 12 to 18.
And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jamie, probably does belong in this group. He's the next one off the board, but he's right behind Joe Mixon. All right, this is another polarizing guy. And we, after this, we'll probably kind of group players a little bit more, but let's get into Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think you really like him this year.
I do. I another group, again, we can look at the Steelers and the Bengals and say that offensive line stinks. The Chiefs better have a good offensive line with the, capital that they put into that group. And they have the best quarterback. They have arguably the best play caller. Andy Reid's running backs, for the most part, have been tried and true, except for this guy last year, which was the expectation that he was going to be the next great Chiefs or next great Reid running back. I like the fact that the competition behind him is minimal. If Darrell Williams is taking him off the field, the Chiefs are idiots. If Jerick McKinnon is going to have more than a minimal role aside from the passing game, then the Chiefs are idiots. I don't think the Chiefs are idiots, so I'm going to trust that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a chance to, live up to the first round billing that they gave him in last year's draft. And so the investment's different this year because last year we were saying he was a first round pick, or some people were saying he was a first round pick. I was one of them. And he failed. But the first 6 games showed you what I think the upside could be with a guy coming off the street, no offseason, having to learn that playbook. We had Evan Washburn, one of our CBS Sports NFL reporters on CBS Sports HQ, and he brought that up, that the Chiefs threw a lot at Edwards-Helaire and he didn't maybe handle it as well as they would have hoped, which is why they invested in Le'Veon Bell, who came to them at next to nothing. So as it stands right now, I think taking a chance on somebody with this type of upside in round 2 is worth it, and I definitely think he belongs in the mix with those other guys.
And when would everybody take Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Seems like Jamie's okay in mid round 2. Dave, how about you? Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Round 3. I'm a little nervous. Count me in on someone who doesn't want to overvalue Edwards-Helaire on the hope that he's getting more work on third downs, on the hope that he starts to work more in short yardage and goal line situations. That offensive line, it's great for him. There's no question about it. Maybe it helps his efficiency. That would be awesome. But that offensive line was also built to protect Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's going to be the guy who benefits a lot, is Mahomes. And Edwards-Helaire is someone that the coaching staff, if he messes up again, he might be in a sick timeshare all year long. So I can't bring myself to invest in him with a round 2 pick.
And Heath, how about you? When would you feel comfortable drafting Clyde Edwards?
This is like, you talk about running backs that I haven't been able to draft this season. I'm more of a 3-4 turn guy with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. How everybody else like I've got him in the Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders range. So I'm not getting him. And I mostly like the short yardage thing, especially. I would agree completely with what Jamie said. Like, we shouldn't be using Darrell Williams in short yardage over Clyde Edwards-Helaire when Clyde Edwards-Helaire had like 5 short yardage carries or something last year. We have no idea if he's good or not. The only thing I would disagree with is if, like, in practice, he still can't protect Patrick Mahomes, then he shouldn't ever play on third down again, or at least until he can in practice, because that's the most important thing that anybody on the field is doing in Kansas City.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the only running back on the Chiefs last year who had more than 1 carry inside the 5-yard line. So it's not like they were using Darrell Williams near the goal line last year.
They weren't. You know who they were using?
They were throwing the ball. They were doing the stupid passes to Tyreek.
It's not
They
stupid.
weren't stupid. They scored on 8 of 10 throws.
A pass. It just bothers me in fantasy football.
But if Clyde's on your roster, it's lots of fun if Kelsey or Tyreek or Hardman or one of those guys is on your team.
No, they're very creative near the goal line, and it did hurt Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But if he gets better at that, he was the only guy that they used in that role, the only running back. Okay, so we got to talk about DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. We'll get into round 3. There's a little bit of a drop in ADP after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's in the middle of round 2. He's, I guess, toward the end. He's at 22. I just don't usually see Joe Mixon last at 21. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 22, and then you get to 28, which is DeAndre Swift, 28 in average draft position. Before we get to that, though, let me now tell you about Sonos Arc. So it's this bar that sits near your TV and blasts not like in a loud way, but produces the best sound you've ever heard. I was unsure. I didn't really know what to think, but I actually went to my cousin's and he has Sonos. We were just listening to music outside and he had Sonos speakers. So I was like, damn, this is incredible quality. So then I got one. I got the bar and the Arc. And I mean, it's just a game changer. The crack of the baseball bat, for example. I haven't really gotten to watch football with Sonos, so I'm looking forward to that. But the crack of the baseball bat is so crisp. It grabs your attention. I use it all the time when I'm not watching TV. I hook up Spotify to my Sonos Arc, and it's like Bluetooth, and you just listen to all the music, and it's just amazing sound quality. So I absolutely recommend it. It's the best sound that I've ever heard. Honestly, the best sound I've ever heard from a TV at home, and it doesn't take up a lot of room. It's not like a big thing. It's not speakers all over the wall or anything. It just goes right in front of your TV. It was so easy to set up using the Sonos app. It looks really good. It just looks like a nice part of the entertainment system. And, I wish I had it for Game of Thrones because that would have been amazing. But like everything I watch is just awesome. We were watching A Quiet Place. And there's not a lot of sound in there, but when there's sound, it really counts and it really grabs you. And when you have a system like this, it makes everything so much better. You're going to like your movies, your TV, your music, your sports, everything so much better. If you want to learn more, go to Sonos.com. That's all you got to do. Sonos.com to learn more. I promise it's worth it. Go read about it, buy it. You're going to love it. And with that said, we've got Raising the Bar presented by Sonos. We're looking at players who have the potential to raise their game to the next level. And we'll take a look at this tier of running back and tell me who has the potential to raise their game to the next level. DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins. And we'll leave it there. We'll go with Swift, Montgomery, and Dobbins. They are mid-round 3 picks. You might be choosing between George Kittle and these guys. You might be choosing between Allen Robinson or Terry McLaurin and these guys. Swift, Montgomery, Dobbins. Jamie, who's got the best chance, you think, to raise their game to the next level?
It's not Montgomery, and that's not because I don't like him. He's just not going to finish as a top 3 running back after finishing number 4 last year. So it's one of the 2 sophomores. I think Dobbins has the most room to grow if, in fact, they give him an opportunity to do some different things more in the passing game like we've heard, which is a stretch. But I don't like the fact of the co-starters that they listed for their first preseason game with him and Gus Edwards. Not that it's anything you should buy into per se, but it's still a little troubling. If Swift was healthy, I would say Swift for sure in PPR, Dobbins in non-PPR. But, man, both those guys have so many concerns.
Do you guys like these running backs in mid-round 3, Dobbins, Swift, and Montgomery?
Well, I'm taking Dobbins and Montgomery over like 5 guys we've already talked about. So yeah,
Dobbins or Swift?
Swift and Montgomery.
Okay.
In PPR, I don't really like Dobbins here that much. I'd rather get him in round 4, and he's never there at all. So I just don't. Dobbins is a guy I don't get. But I'm not really scared of Tariq Cohen anymore. I've pretty much, like, I don't quite think Montgomery's going to have the same touch total he did last year, but I don't think it's going to be that far off. And so I've got him close to my top 12. I don't expect him to fully repeat the top 4 season from last year, but I do think he has a good shot at 300 touches. I think he still has a good shot at 50 catches. And if Justin Fields shows up and makes this offense good, then there's no reason David Montgomery can't be a top 5 running back again.
Dave, how about you? Dobbins, Swift, and Montgomery. Who's worthy of a top 30 pick?
I think Montgomery is the one who's worth it the most. We've seen it from him. We know what his potential is. You go back to those 6 games last year, they were outstanding. He averaged 4.5 targets per game in those 6. He actually averaged 4.5 targets per game in the 9 games before then as well. That was when Tariq Cohen was healthy. Well, for part of that, Tariq Cohen was healthy. But really, it was the carries. It was the workload that the Bears gave him. They gave him a lot of snaps. He came through against weak opponents. I'm a little concerned about the offensive line being good for Chicago. They're a little beat up right now. But the point Heath made about Justin Fields just can't be understated, because Fields is a two-way quarterback. He's a rushing threat. That's obviously going to help open up lanes, because defenses have to pay attention to Fields when he's got the ball just as much as they have to worry about Montgomery. So maybe that means fewer crowded boxes for Montgomery, especially once Fields does the mesh and then gives Montgomery the ball and then fakes the run himself. He would be at the top of the list. I've got Swift ahead of Dobbins in PPR for obvious reasons. I think Swift has immense upside as a pass catcher. There's been a lot of talk out of Detroit about him being the workhorse there, just as much talk about him being a 1A or a 1B, and now he's beat up. So I'm nervous about it, but I think he can still be that Eckler in Detroit. So that means 70 catches are on the table for him. He was not bad in short yardage goal line situations last year. I don't know if he'll keep that role this year, but he'll get a lot of usage. Unfortunately, it's with the team that's probably going to play from behind a lot. That'll help him with the catches. It'll hurt him with the carries. Dobbins has the most upside because he's the most talented of these 3, if you ask me. He's awesome. It's just a matter of opportunities in Baltimore. Will he be able to fend off Gus Edwards and put him into like 4 or 5 carries per game, which we kind of started to see toward the end of last year? Edwards wasn't working as much, and certainly Dobbins was dominating at the goal line compared to Gus Edwards. I hope that continues. We know that Lamar doesn't get a lot of carries in short yardage, and there's all this talk about J.K. Dobbins doing more in the passing game. If that were to happen, then we're all way too low on J.K. Dobbins, and he should be closer to round 2, not round 3.
I just want to circle back. Like, in full PPR, I don't think J.K. Dobbins this season, unless Baltimore just changes their offense completely, has the same upside as Swift and Montgomery, just because it's been really set the last 3 years. 30% of the carries for Lamar Jackson, 35% of the carries for RB2, 35% of the carry, 40% of the carries for RB1. I just did the math wrong, and maybe 40 running back targets for the whole team. So I think that, like, Swift, I agree with what Dave said. He's in a position where he could have 70 to 80 catches, and it would just be consistent with the offense that team wants to run. The other thing is, on the Swift injury, I don't know what to make of that right now. It's not good. I wish he wasn't missing reps, but I don't know that he's actually missed any days of practice. And I can't imagine if it was a serious injury, they would have him out there doing anything.
Well, I mean, just to put that in perspective, Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson were practice today also. They're not doing anything, but they're walking through drills. So he could be out there listening to what they're saying, standing next to Anthony Lynn or to Deuce Staley and listening to what they're saying, but he may not be, touching the football or doing anything of that magnitude. I think the problem with the injury is that Swift should have been closer to the other group, which is probably like where Heath has it ranked, but he's falling back closer to this group and maybe Montgomery doesn't belong in this group as well, but he's falling closer to where these guys are being drafted. So Swift's upside, if he's right, should still be, I think closer to what like Gibson and Edwards-Helaire and those type of guys because of what his role should be. But the thing with Dobbins is, and it's a hope again, this is what you're hoping for, but he has the chance to maybe double Swift in touchdowns just based on how these two teams look. Wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 12-6 situation in terms of rushing touchdowns and whatever Swift does as a pass catcher. The other part for Dobbins is this Rashad Bateman injury now, which is being reported as several weeks that he's going to miss time. Mike Garofalo of the NFL Network just sent this out now. And if Marquise Brown is out, they may not have a choice but to throw him the ball a little bit more. Or they just lean more into the run game. And we saw what that was for him last year, as Dave, alluded to, and obviously what it could be for Lamar Jackson too. So their plan may have gone off the rails a little bit with some of these injuries, and they may just revert back to what worked for them last year as an offense.
And what that was last year, Adam, was 11.6 carries per game for Dobbins in the final 7. Gus, actually, I sold him short. He had 9.7 carries per game, but Gus only had 1 short yardage goal line carry in his last 7. That includes the postseason. Dobbins was 3 for 3, plus he had a touchdown from 4 yards out and from 5 yards out. I think he's got that role, and that's a good start for him. I just wish he'd have a few more carries. If we could lock him into 14 carries per game, plus the short yardage role, and then have this hope that he catches more passes, I think he's kind of close to that already. I think that he'd be much more intriguing for fantasy.
All right, let me just give you this on Dobbins here. His last 6 games, that was almost everybody that we're talking about today had a great 6-game stretch last year. That was just kind of how it worked, including Darrell Henderson, ironically. Not a great, but like a featured 6-game stretch.
And I think Myles Gaskin and Mike Davis too, right?
I don't know about them, but all of the year 2 guys, it was 6 games. It's really weird. Last 6 games, his pace, he averaged 6.4 yards per carry, by the way. On pace for 205 carries and only 8 catches, but 19 touchdowns. And that made him the number 6 running back per game in non-PPR. But where did it make Dobbins in full PPR? Number 11 per game. So that, like, the best case scenario, 19 touchdown pace and 6.4 yards per carry. He was number 11 per game in PPR. So just keep that in mind. And that is basically where Mark Ingram finished in PPR in 2019. Now listen, the third round is a horrible round for running backs. It just is. Yeah. In half PPR in the last 4 seasons, 20
historically.
Yeah. 23 running backs in the last 4 years have been selected in round 3 in half PPR. 10 of them finished outside the top 30. Only 4 of them finished in the top 10. So 4 of 23. So this is like, and if you look at ADP, it's I think really interesting. Most of the high-end wide receivers come off the board before Swift and Montgomery and Dobbins. So you're talking Metcalf, Ridley, Waller, Jefferson, AJ Brown, Kittle, Keenan Allen, and then Swift, Montgomery, Dobbins. And then McLaurin, Allen Robinson. Should McLaurin and Allen Robinson be going ahead of these 3 running backs?
Yes.
I've got McLaurin ahead of Dobbins. I've got Robinson ahead of all 3.
Yeah, I think I have both of them ahead of Dobbins for sure. I think I probably have Swift and Montgomery ahead of them.
All right, let's go to our next group. And this is going to be late round 3 and into round 4. Miles Sanders, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, and I think we should throw Darrell Henderson in here as well. So that would be 6 running backs. What? No.
No, I mean, you can put anybody you want in here, but this is where I think people start to draw that red line that we talked about, where, okay, I'm not going to feel good about these guys in a starting spot on my team.
All right. Well, to be fair, I mean, I guess if we're really going by ADP, I'm doing it wrong because Sanders, Carson, and Jacobs are 35, 36, and 37. They're at the 3-4 turn. Myles Gaskin is 46th. Mike Davis is 53rd with Kareem Hunt. So I don't know. What is in your mind the next group? And by the way, Travis Etienne's ADP is really weird. He's not listed on ESPN, so his ADP is dragged all the way down, but he should probably be in this range too. So I guess I should just ask you, which running backs do you look for in this range as we get to where the hell is Chris Carson? Oh, there he is. I said it.
Carson,
is that the name of this tier?
Guy. Yeah, Carson.
Okay. All right. So Heath, which running backs do you look for? 3-4 swing and into round 4.
I mean, if you're talking Carson, Jacobs, and Sanders, it's Carson because I don't think he has as much competition, despite the fact that Rashad Penny got a little bit of good run before he pulled up lame again. And I don't know, he might be back at practice today, but I saw he was out over the weekend. And Carson's been pretty underrated. I mean, you talk about how much everybody hates Joe Mixon. Chris Carson's been Joe Mixon 2 rounds later for the last 3 years, and maybe just a little bit more reliable. So if I'm taking a running back in this range, and I'm not often, but Carson's the guy that I'm looking for, and I think he's a high-end number 2 running back. There are several guys we've talked about that I would take Carson over.
Yeah, so this is like I think this is going to be a popular wide receiver range for a lot of people. This is the Dallas guys, the Tampa Bay guys, Robert Woods, Julio Jones. But if you're
this is the Mahomes range for me in our drafts, but that's not true for anybody that's listening, probably.
And it's not really a tight end range because the big three are off the board. But okay, so Carson's our favorite, Sanders, Jacobs, and then let's say ETN. Do you think ETN, Henderson, Gaskin, and Mike Davis belong with this group?
I put Gaskin ahead of Sanders and Jacobs and Henderson as well.
I almost think Carson is. I think Carson. I think is the only one that I'd be comfortable taking in late round 3.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
I think Jamie likes Gaskin, so maybe he'd take Gaskin there. And
I would not take Gaskin in round 3. No, but I think Carson late round 3 is correct. Yes.
So Gaskin you like more than Henderson, ETN?
Yeah, I have it. Gaskin, Henderson, Sanders, Jacobs.
I have it. Gaskin, Henderson, Jacobs, Davis. I've got Sanders about 4 running backs away.
Where's ETN?
After this group, for me.
Non-PPR ETN is after. In PPR, I like him better than Davis.
Okay. So make your Myles Gaskin case, Jamie.
Well, I mean, we saw it last year. Once they realized that Jordan Howard was donezo, they decided to give Gaskin the job basically in week 3. When we play the extrapolation game, and take the numbers that he put up in the games that he appeared in 10 games. And in those 10 games, he had 142 carries, 548 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and 41 catches, 388 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So over 16 games, that's 877 rushing yards and 66 catches for 621 yards. Do you know how many running backs had 800 rushing yards and 600 receiving yards?
No, I'm not even going to guess.
Heath?
800 and 600?
800 rushing and 600 receiving.
I'm going to say 0.
2.
Dave?
I'll say 37.
Kamara did.
Kamara is the only running back to do that last year. So that's pretty good company. If Gaskin has that type of upside. Now, again, it's a huge stretch, clearly, because he's not Alvin Kamara. But the Dolphins treated him as the guy. And you tell me Malcolm Brown is the one that they brought in to take him off the field at this point. We keep saying the Dolphins and the Falcons. It's like Mike Davis and Myles Gaskin keep skating by. The Dolphins' offensive line, I think, is good. Brian Flores told Pete Prisco that they love Myles Gaskin. So he's in a great spot. And, this is a team that's going to be competitive. I think the offense is actually going to, perform maybe better than people think with Tua comparatively to where he played last year. So to me, Myles Gaskin might be a 3rd-round player by the time, the season's over if he can stay healthy. And it was somewhat fluky. He had the lower leg injury, which was disappointing, but he missed 2 games because of COVID. And you saw, though, I think the encouraging thing is when he went out, they just went right to the next guy and didn't make it a committee. So they like to use one guy, and Myles Gaskin seems to be that guy.
Adam, you will love this. He had an 8-game stretch that I think rivals any of the second-year backs' 6-game stretches. He started his first game week 3 at Jacksonville. The next 8 games, he was on pace for 1,648 total yards and 10 touchdowns. That included 62 catches.
He scored 13 or more PPR fantasy points in 8 of 9 games beginning in week 3. I think just people are going to say, am I drafting a good running back? He averaged 4.1 yards per carry. His longest carry of the season was 26 yards, which is nothing special. He fumbled at the end of it. He was a 7th-round draft pick.
I think people should not ask that question as often as we have referenced it early in this show.
Why?
I think they should ask, am I drafting a running back who could get 20 touches a game?
But
that's what he is.
I would even lower that to 15 touches a game.
If he's not good, then he's going to Todd Gurley it, and he's going to get replaced.
That does happen occasionally.
No, how many bad running backs? Like, look at what happened with Mike Davis last year.
Most of the time, we don't know. I don't think running back talent matters quite as much as you think it does. I think situation and role matters the most at this position. There are a few outliers.
I'm nodding.
You're just not going to keep your role if you're bad. And I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying
you're right, Adam, because Davis is a great example. He started to struggle at the end, and they started to use other guys. They used Curtis Samuel more as a running back. It was a frustrating situation, for people that were riding Mike Davis into the playoffs. Todd Gurley's another good example of that.
You know what? David Montgomery is a good example. David Montgomery, his first year and a half wasn't doing anything, and he was getting a ton of work. He wasn't, even with Tariq Cohen was out, and he was doing nothing with it. Then he had the easiest schedule in world history, and he crushed it for the last 6 games.
David Montgomery's not bad, and this has been litigated,
but he's not great. He's not great, and he's probably better than Myles Gaskin. But you have to be I don't really agree with the premise that running back skill doesn't matter and only opportunity matters. Because if you're not good, you're not going to keep getting the opportunities.
It is, though, just to counter, like you said, 7th round pick, the pedigree is a little bit different, in today's NFL than it has been, and Gaskin's a good example of that. James Robinson's a good example of that. You can give a guy an opportunity and he takes advantage of it. And maybe his skill set wasn't worthy of being drafted in the 1st or 2nd round of the NFL draft, but teams could have made a mistake and they find that guy and they give him an opportunity and he thrives in it. But at the same time, those are few and far between. But, I think you look at how the coaching staff features him or treats him. They seem to treat him, as a lead running back as much as anybody else in the league. Did have a significant role or significant enough role in the passing game. And their offseason should kind of be a telling situation as well. They had every opportunity with all the draft capital that they had to make a move in the NFL draft. They didn't. Their biggest free agent acquisition to date is Malcolm Brown, the guy that they put a waiver claim in on, Kerryon Johnson, that they didn't get, is probably not going to make the team in Philadelphia. So even if he had come, he might not have been a factor as well. So the Dolphins are treating him like their guy. And I think fantasy managers should as well. And everything you saw from him last year, speaks to a very good player, maybe not an upper echelon elite level player, but a good enough player that you can treat as a number 2 running back, maybe with top 12 upside.
I'm sorry. I just want to finish. When you go back and you look at running backs that have been huge busts, and you see players like Alex Collins and Isaiah Crowell, who looked like they were in line for big opportunities. The good thing is those guys were going in the 3rd round when they were busts, and you don't have to do that.
Jeremy Langford, Trent Richardson. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
Richardson was not going in the 3rd round.
Well, Richardson
he was a 1st round pick. He was good. He was definitely good.
Right. He was a shocking,
much better than David Montgomery.
Richardson's one of the biggest busts, ever, basically, at the position. But
wasn't he under 4 yards per carry?
I'm saying that mockingly. He was obviously not better than David Montgomery, but all visual perception and idea of ours based on what he'd done in college and where he was drafted is that he was much better than David Montgomery.
My point is, though, that we do fall in love with opportunities a lot, and we end up drafting Alex Collins and Isaiah Crowell in the 3rd round and Justin Forsett and stuff like that. And we live to regret it. So that's the only point I'm trying to make.
We also ascribe bad yards per carry to running backs, and then they have top 5 seasons, and we live to regret it.
Like who?
David Montgomery.
Yeah, but David Montgomery had 6 games at the end of the year. He was still a bad.
We've talked about 7 running backs in our top 15 on 6-game samples.
And look, if David Montgomery, he's not a great runner. He's not that fast. That he doesn't break away. He doesn't give you big plays. He's very good at breaking tackles. He's shifty. He is good at that, no question. But he's not an elite running back. Otherwise,
you said shifty, right?
Yes.
There was an F. I heard an F.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm getting off track. Kareem Hunt.
He's a really good running back.
Where does he? He hasn't really been as good with the Browns. I don't really understand it. He's
been good when he was by himself with the Browns. He wasn't good when he was with Nick Chubb with the Browns.
Not really, though. I mean, it depends what you use. Was the production good? Yeah, it was pretty good. But he wasn't nearly as explosive with the Browns as he was with the Chiefs. So I don't really get that.
Yes. I mean, he's older. He's obviously, gone through his off-field situation. So, whatever that belong.
Where does he belong? Because he's going 53rd, I think, Kareem Hunt.
We were talking about a group that included Sanders, Gaskin, Henderson, Etienne, Davis, Jacobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hunt's behind them all.
The only reason he's behind them all is because of the workload. That's the only thing. If he was on a different team, then it's a different situation. But
if he's on a different team, he's ahead of almost, 90% of running backs in the National Football League.
Right. He's
around.
The group that we talked about yesterday, Adam, of Jamal Williams, Gus Edwards, AJ Dillon, all these guys that are going to play in tandem with their other, lead rusher. He's the best of that guy by far. but he needs Nick Chubb to disappear for him to maximize his potential.
And I struggle with him and ETN because I think I think I actually have Hunt projected for more points in both formats. ETN seems more exciting and actually appears to have the ability to take the job from James Robinson, where we don't see that ability for Nick Chubb. But I don't know for sure. The situation's obviously a lot better for Kareem Hunt. If Kareem Hunt ends up in a feature role and Travis Etienne ends up in a feature role on the Jaguars, I would much rather have Kareem Hunt.
Yes.
So those are two guys that I struggle with quite a bit. I think I'll probably rank Etienne higher, but project Hunt higher, but they shouldn't be that far apart.
So let's get into round 6 then. After Kareem Hunt, I can't really skip over Mike Davis. So can you guys give me just a quick thought on Mike Davis? Dave, are you confident in Mike Davis?
No. He's 28 years old. His breakout season was last year, given the opportunity after being pretty much a perennial backup. He had 3 amazing games. And then you saw his target share dwindle over the last half of the season in Carolina. He wasn't particularly efficient, certainly not nearly as efficient as he was in those first 3 games. And then he joins Atlanta, and I think he can be the lead back there to start the season. But the same thing that you were kind of talking about with Gaskin, Adam, absolutely applies to Mike Davis. Not that I'm ready to say go get Kadri Allison or Javian Hawkins or Cordero Patterson. I'm not going to say anything like that. I don't know if the Falcons subscribe to the theory that they need to have a mega back. I know that Arthur Smith had one in Tennessee. He had the chance to go out and get one in the draft. He didn't do it. I just think Mike Davis is kind of a guy filling a role right now, and he doesn't have the same type of upside that other running backs in this group do.
I don't know what his upside is, and I'd be interested to see what he looks like in games at the start of this year, because I do think it's different when you prepare for a season to be the starter as opposed to when you prepare to be a backup. I mean, surely we'd like for all guys to prepare to just be the starter, but I don't think it's the same thing. I don't remember any pictures of his quads last summer, and they look spectacular now. I will just, again, he had a 6-game stretch. It was 3 games that were awesome, but he had a 6-game stretch where he was on pace for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns. And I do think the situation in Atlanta is better. I think the Falcons line will likely be better than the Panthers was last year. I think the Falcons will score more points than the Panthers did last year. So I think he's a little bit underrated where he's being drafted. I would rather draft Mike Davis than Miles Sanders.
The thing with Davis is, and I think both guys said it, he just feels like a floor play as opposed to a ceiling play. I don't think there's top 10 or top 15 upside with Mike Davis unless he just cobbles his way to total points by the end of the year. And the one thing that I think when you look at the situation by comparison, that system last year, the team is, Heath is right, the Falcons team should probably put up more points than the Panthers team, but the system in Carolina certainly was set up to favor the running back more so than this system is. And that's not taking anything away from Arthur Smith and what he did, but the involvement in the passing game, the ability to get their running backs out in space, whether carrying the ball or throwing to them, I think matters, quite a bit. And I think with Mike Davis, he seems to be more like the type of guy you were talking about with Myles Gaskin, where you're valuing the opportunity more so than the player.
I think they're in the same boat. I accept, I think because Gaskin's younger, he might be good. I'm not saying that he's not good. I wasn't trying
but just to what you were, for me at least, what you were describing, this feels more like that type of guy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go to round 6 then and see if we're excited about any running backs here. And that would be after Kareem Hunt. It would be James Robinson, Chase
Why
Edmonds.
is he still going in the 6th round? I don't get it.
James Robinson, Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Raheem Mostert. It's going to be a lot of names.
Well, Mostert's round 7, right?
Yeah. All right. So it's Robinson, Edmonds, and Javonte Williams. And then you're looking at Mostert, Melvin Gordon, Michael Carter, the Bucks guys, Trey Sermon. This is a big group here. So, Jamie, why don't you pick some running backs that you gravitate to after round 6 once round 6 begins?
Oh, I'm going to take Damian Harris over all these guys. I just think the opportunity that he has as the lead rusher for the Patriots with the team that's definitely going to run the ball a ton.
Over Michael Carter.
Yeah, non-PPR, PPR. I'll take Carter. Non-PPR, I'll take Harris.
Over
They're
Edmonds?
back-to-back for me in both formats.
Over Chase Edmonds. Heath wants to know.
Yes.
Okay, so Damian Harris.
I mean, everything you're hearing out of Arizona just feels messy. Just feels like it's going to be absolutely messy.
All right, so Harris, Michael Carter, those would be your two favorites. Heath, how about you?
Yeah, Edmonds is the top, and I think it depends on my running back group, but Mostert or Damian Harris would be right there. I don't like this group that we're talking about now extends all the way from round 6 through round 8 or round 9, looking at ADP. I don't really have a lot of interest in Leonard Fournette. I'll draft Ronald Jones a couple rounds later over him based on ADP. Javonte Williams has lots of upside, but I don't want to take Javonte Williams unless I already have 2 running backs.
And he's going 68th in ADP, but I don't know the date range here, and I don't buy that he's going 68th. I'm not sure you can get Javonte Williams in the 6th round anymore.
It totally depends on where you're drafting, I think. Like NFC, you have to take him at the 4 or 5 turn, it seems like. I would say CBS, you can probably get him in round 6.
Okay, so basically this group that Heath is referring to is backfields that look like committees right now, but we don't know how they'll end up. Now, there are exceptions. We don't know, but Michael Carter, we feel like he could beat out the competition there. But we've got the Niners, we've got the Cardinals, we've got the Buccaneers, we've got the Broncos, we've got the Jets, we've got the Texans, even though David Johnson is the only one that's really getting drafted.
Lindsey gets drafted.
Well, but in this range, in this range.
Oh, sure.
Lindsey's RB 52. So and then there's Damian Harris. So Jamie, that's what it is for you. It's just that he's got his role. He's going to be there.
It seems to be that way. Again, it's the Patriots, so things could change. I would like it a lot better if they were to find a way to get rid of Sony Michel, which I hope they do for Sony Michel's sake. But I think, just hearing everything that you're looking at everything that's coming out of Patriots camp and, seeing the way that they used him last year, this team, the way they're going to run the ball is going to be so much better than what we saw a year ago.
Dave, give me your impressions of this group here and who you seem to take.
So I'm looking for running backs that can get me at least 10 PPR points per game. Would be nice if they did a little bit more than that. So I'm definitely looking for upside. And Carter is the one that tops the list. I look at the other running backs in New York, and yeah, it's ugly. The guys behind him on the depth chart with the Jets. And I think he's going to, he started camp as their 1A. I think he's going to be their 1A for the majority of the season. He's got good speed. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He's small. He can hide behind those big offensive linemen, make a cut, and then he's off to the races. I think that he's got the potential that you're looking for from a fantasy running back in the round 6 range. James Robinson's on my list too, and I'll admit that he's a little touchdown dependent and a little bit more of a floor play, but I think he's going to be the main running back for Jacksonville this year. I know that it doesn't make sense because they took ETN with a first-round pick, and you figure in time, ETN will just dominate the carries. Maybe that happens in the back half of the season, but I think Robinson gets off to a pretty decent start with Jacksonville, and maybe he holds on to that role for a while. So I think it's safer to take Robinson in 7. I'm not opposed to taking him in 6. And another name that we haven't really talked about is Raheem Mostert,
yes,
who may not even be the starter for San Francisco, and the 49ers are going to be a mess. No, I don't think Mostert's going to average. He might average 10 PPR points per game in the games he's healthy for. What I'm concerned about with the 49ers is that no matter who's healthy, they're going to mix and match. I don't think the odds are very high that we're going to have a workhorse running back out of San Francisco. But I'll take a guy who's fast. I'll take a guy who's been working on his hands and a guy who's been there in the system for a couple of years now. In this range, if I have to, I would do it.
You're talking about Mostert, right?
Mostert over Sermon, right?
The thing that I don't know with Carter and Mostert, like that discussion, Carter's younger, so he's more exciting, obviously. I don't know that Carter has more per game touch upside than Mostert. And I think
catches though, like he's
right, but Mostert's probably, like, all evidence we have suggests Mostert's going to have a 3.5 yard lane before anybody touches him. He's probably going to average 5 yards a carry, and he's probably going to be really good anytime he gets 10 to 12 touches. Like if you told me that Raheem Mostert and Michael Carter both got 12 touches per game, I would assume that Raheem Mostert's going to score more fantasy points.
Who's working the goal line for San Francisco?
Well, I don't know why it would be the rookie over Mostert.
Well, because he's a little more physical, and they don't want to.
And let's not discount Jeff Wilson.
Going to get hurt.
Could still be back early in the season,
Sure.
So that's another guy. They're going to use Adam's favorite player. Play the sound.
Golden. Thank you.
He's somebody that they've mentioned about using. So this feels as much of a committee as it has been. You got to factor in the injury concern with Mostert too. He tends to miss time. Michael Carter could easily get hurt as well. But there seems to just be much better talent surrounding Raheem Mostert than there is surrounding Michael Carter. No disrespect to Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, and LaMichael Pirine, but I think Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson, when he's healthy, and Wayne Gallman are a better group. And the 49ers have shown you, it's like we always want to take trends, right? From when a coach leaves a coaching staff, and so Mike LaFleur leaving, Kyle Shanahan, is he going to do the same thing? And you would have said the Patriots guys leaving Bill Belichick and doing the same thing. Well, Brian Flores didn't do that. He had a guy, leaned on a guy, and the coaching staff leaned on a guy. I don't know if Mike LaFleur is going to do the same thing, but Michael Carter seems to be getting the majority of the first team work, whereas the report today is Trey Sermon's getting first team work with the 49ers. And so if he proves to be as good as he looked at Ohio State, it may be difficult for Raheem Mostert to get the amount of touches like you're talking about, Heath. He could really go into a secondary role.
Well, Sermon's interesting because his 40 time is not very impressive, but his, I think, 10-yard dash, very impressive, which is really important for the 49ers offense. That's why they liked him. And, something Dave said is really interesting because I'm kind of a Mostert guy, man. I really believe in Mostert. He is blazing fast. He had 2 of the fastest plays by a running back last year. He ran like 22 miles per hour. But he does get hurt all the time. If we don't really think that so that's why I was kind of leaning, I'll just take Sermon and wait for the injury. But if Dave, you don't think that they're going to just give the keys to Sermon if Mostert gets injured, then that's kind of a bummer. I will say that they really did use Mostert. It might not be obvious from the game logs, but first, before he got hurt at the beginning of the season last year, they really did use Mostert as a primary back in a way that we maybe weren't expecting.
Well, and I think he had 14 to 16 carries in the 3 games late in the year.
Did he with Jeff Wilson?
Yeah.
He averaged 13 attempts per game on the balance of the year. And he was under 50% of the snaps after week 1 last year.
But some of that was he left injuries. Some of that was there was a blowout where he didn't play down the stretch.
Right. But there wasn't a game where he was over 50% of the snaps.
Yeah, sure.
But his last 5 games, he had 17, 16, 9, 14, and 14 carries. That's
good. And then Wilson had a lot in those games too. But I think my point is, if you're a Sermon guy, part of you is going, well, if Mostert gets hurt, I'm going to have a stud. And do you feel that? I don't think Dave feels that way.
No,
not yet.
It would be a departure from what we've seen from the 49ers.
Exactly.
If they did that. But again, Mostert, a scrap heap guy who bounced around the league. Wilson, a scrap heap guy. Think about, this is a guy, not that they made a huge investment, but when they had all these guys, still, they spent a 3rd-round pick on Trey Sermon. So maybe this is the type of player that can not necessarily be a 25-touch guy, maybe not a 20-touch guy, but maybe an 18-touch guy and work the goal line and, maybe use him a little bit in the passing game. And again, shake things up a little bit if he proves to be that type of player. That's it's again, going back to what I said about some of the guys at the start of the show. That's the optimistic view of what Trey Sermon is. But I think in this range of players, you're taking some shots on guys that if things hit for them, you have a league-winning type of player. And if Trey Sermon becomes the lead running back for the 49ers, maybe, big maybe, but maybe that is what could happen.
All right, we're going to do rapid-fire fantasy reaction. You have 10 seconds to give me your thoughts on the following players. Javonte Williams, Jamie.
If he separates from Melvin Gordon, has star potential.
But why is he not at the front of the group? You have 10 extra seconds. Because I think
he's right there for me with Harris and Carter and Edmonds. All 4 of those guys, I think, are in this range.
All right, Dave, so Jamie gets Javonte Williams, the shiny new car. You get what's in the box? David Johnson. Give me your thoughts.
Well, he's not dead, and he's on a team that ran the ball at a historically low rate last year. They'll run it a little bit more. Hopefully he gets around 14 carries per game. Good bench running back.
John Doe has the upper hand. John Doe has the upper hand.
No idea.
What's in the box?
That's 7.
Yeah.
John Doe is the upper hand. I don't know that one. All right,
that's Morgan Freeman running back when he realized what's in the box.
Oh. Yeah, gross. Heath, Bucks running backs.
Man, I think if Giovanni Bernard stays healthy, it's probably unlikely that either Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette give you a top 25 season. And if all three of them stay healthy, then it's just really, really gross. But I think Ronald Jones is the one you want to draft if you're drafting one of the early downs backs. I think Gio is the best value in PPR because he's available after round 12.
How about this
First
group?
off, the side was about 3 seconds, and then the rest of it was way over 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was. That's okay though, because I gave him I gave him a backfield.
I had 3 backs. I had 30 seconds.
How about this group that goes after the Bucks guys, after the 49ers guys? Zach Moss, 98th overall. James Conner, Kenyon Drake.
Good time for this. Zach Moss left today's practice with a hamstring injury.
Wow. Shocked.
Yeah, this is a
totally shocked. So that's injury number 8 in the last 3 years.
Hopefully it's nothing, but he did leave practice with a hamstring injury.
Well, do you like, independent of that for now, do you like Moss, Connor, and Drake at 100th overall?
I like Connor and Drake more than Moss.
Connor, I like the most. Moss and Drake
and Connor more than Drake.
Yeah, Drake's
assuming Moss is healthy.
Okay, and then we're going to start to get to the, yes, they're handcuffs, but also they're going to have a role. A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Tony Pollard, Jamal Williams, Gus Edwards, Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissick, Latavius Murray. You know, who are the ones that you typically look at there? Heath, we got Devin Singletary, Pollard, Jamal Williams, Gus Edwards, Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissick, Latavius Murray.
Williams has the highest projection for me currently. I think he could be a decent flex. Dillon's right behind that and has a lot more upside than Williams. Singletary is available like 4 rounds after these guys usually. So
it's true. All right. Yeah, I think these guys kind of speak for themselves. So if there's anyone that you think you could actually start, Jamal Williams would be Heath's answer. Dave, is there someone that you think actually could start out of Dillon, Singletary, Pollard, Jamal Williams, Edwards, Nyheim Hines, McKissick, Latavius Murray?
In week 1, the only answer is Williams, and it's just on the hunch that he takes on that physical. I don't think he's going to be that 1A guy like they've been talking about. I think he works 9-10 touches a game and maybe works short yardage goal line for Detroit. Dillon would be next for me, but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him.
Maybe non-PPR Gus Edwards. He had a lot of weeks with 7-ish points.
Yes.
So that's really not that bad. I mean, you don't
doesn't mean I want to start him though.
I mean, bye week replacement, you could do worse. All right. Anyone? What's that?
Are there buys in week 1?
No. Let's see, Jamie. We're finishing up our running back preview. There are other backups available here. High-end handcuffs. Maybe Chuba Hubbard has a good year. Oh well, we don't want that to happen. But Jamie, any names that I missed that you want to talk about, like Kadri Allison or Josh?
Darrell Williams, Xavier Jones, and Samaje Perine. You know, all guys that are in situations where we've seen it in some cases before with Darrell Williams. Did I say Damian Williams? Darrell Williams. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Darrell Williams. We saw last year, where they used him down the stretch. If Edwards-Helaire gets hurt, he's got the opportunity to play in that Chiefs offense behind that offensive line with that quarterback and that coach. So I like that. Xavier Jones seems to be competing with Funk to be the backup to Darrell Henderson. But if whoever gets that job could, get those touches that Henderson was getting last year in tandem with Akers, or whoever the second guy was with Akers, when it was Malcolm Brown. And then Samaje Perine, again, the Bengals can potentially use him as their number 2 guy if something happens to Joe Mixon. And as we saw last year, something happened to Joe Mixon. So those are 3 guys I take late in a lot of leagues.
And I've got a new suggestion proposal for the cockroach. Justin Jackson We've buried him multiple times over the past two seasons, and recent reports say he's getting a majority of the work with Austin Eckler. And in their first depth chart, he was listed ahead of Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree again. One of those guys is going to be in that Jamal Williams or better role with the Chargers in a much better offense. We just don't know who it's going to be.
All right. Awesome. That is that's the last time we're going to talk about running backs until until the season starts, everybody. So now, obviously running back previews, they never end. These are fluid previews. We'll be amending our opinions as the news comes in, as the preseason games start, which is very, very soon. And we got a lot more for you. Wide receiver part 1 and part 2 coming up later this week. Also a mailbag on Saturday and our salary cap draft that we just did on Tuesday. We're going to air that as a podcast on Sunday. I want to thank Dave, Jamie, and Heath, and all of you for listening. I am Adam, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football.